Bhavata Rama Keshavau. Vaishnavis, Pratiyate, having left. 2, then. Deva Rishau, the sage among the demigods. Kangsaha, King Kangsa. Abhashya, addressing. Keshinam, the demon Keshi. Preshayam Asa, he sent him. Hanyetam, the two should be killed. Bhavata, by you. Rama Keshavau, Balaram and Krishna. Translation. After Narad left, King Kangsa summoned Keshi and ordered him, go kill Ram and Krishna. Do you do the repeat where I say it and then you say it? We'll read it one more time then. After Narad left, King Kangsa summoned Keshi and ordered him, go kill Ram and Krishna. Hare Krishna. I've been given the service of speaking on 4 verses. So this is 1. And then there's 3 more, and I think there's a purport, a very short purport at the end of text 24. So I'm going all the way up to text 24. So I guess I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses I'm speaking on. This verse says, Pratiyate tu Deva Rishau. So after Narad Muni, the Devarshi had left. Then Kangsa Abhashya Keshinam. Kangsa then addressed Keshi. Preshayam Asahanyetam Bhavata Rama Keshava. He sent him forward and he said, Ram and Keshava should be killed by you. Because it's funny because he chooses to call Krishna Keshava. I just noticed this now as somehow I missed this when I studied. So Keshava means, in a literal translation to English, Keshava means hairy person from Kesh. That would be a literal translation. So someone who has hair is called Keshava. Actually, also it's a name for Keshi, the demon Keshi, because also I guess horses have hair as well. So then they're in the possessive, just like a yogi is one who has yoga, so a Keshi is one who has hair. Keshins in the old Veda, they were sannyasi, tyagi, shramans who would not cut their hair, and they would have jata, and they were called Keshins. It's kind of a precursor to the avadhut or the sannyasi in the Puranic literature and the Itihasa literature in the old Veda, you would find the Keshans. And they were this kind of tyagi, renunciates that existed on the periphery of the Vedic culture. They were accepted, they were acknowledged, but they did not participate in the social structure. They were like avaduts. So anyway, Keshava means somebody who has hair, beautiful hair. And so we give all sorts of, you could say, creative etymologies for Keshava. We say that Keshava means Kava Isha, the Lord of Brahma and Shiva. And so we say that's the name Keshava, right? Or we say Keshava is the killer of the Keshi demon. That's another way. You could also say that as well. That's another way of interpreting Keshava. And so those are appropriate. There's nothing wrong with those. But they're not, just like we say, you say sometimes mantra means mana atra, the thing which delivers the mind. So that's not what mantra means. Mantra comes from matri. It means advice. That's why you call a counselor for a king a mantri. And so that's the literal meaning. But then when you want to preach, then for thousands of years, pundits have taken a word and they've taken this means this and this means this and this means this. So the gopis call Krishna Mukunda, and then we say, oh, that means Krishna who has a mukha face like a kunda flower. Or he's Madhusudan, but the gopis, why would they call him Madhusudan, the killer of the Madhu demon? So then it means that person who is giving, dan, that thing which is sweeter than Madhu honey, prem. And so this isn't a new thing. It's been around for a long time. That as a form of exegesis, as a way of unpacking the meaning that the teacher is trying to teach, he gives, within certain parameters, additional meanings of names. So anyway, if we take Keshava as meaning the killer of Keshi, then Kamsa is telling Keshi to go and meet his death. Which is funny. It's poetic. The Bhagavatam is poetic even in such macabre circumstances. It's kind of like I feel a little inauspicious. The verse I'm lecturing on is, I have to say, quote, go kill Ram and Keshava. I don't like the way those words sound coming out of my mouth. And so, somehow, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that by the grace of the goddess Saraswati, the word hanyetam, which means you should go kill them. They should be killed. That can also mean you should go meet them. Han means to hurt or to kill. The Sanskrit dhatu han means to hurt or to kill, but it also can mean to go meet somebody. One of its secondary, tertiary meanings is to go meet somebody. And so when you take it in that way, go meet Krishna and Balaram, and then when you see that Krishna's name is Keshava, it means go meet them and you'll be killed. And so that's not here in this translation, but you do find there's something nice. Prabhupada didn't finish translating the 10th canto. I'm assuming all of you Vaishnavas are aware of that. He translated through chapter 13, and then he left this world on November 14th, 1977. And then his disciples, Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, and especially Hridananda Maharaj, took up the service of commenting and giving purports. And but one great blessing we have, of course it's a blessing that they did that service also, but one great blessing we have is that Prabhupada also translated this chapter of the 10th canto. Anybody know where he did it? Jagjivan Prabhu, the Krishna book. I think all you Vaishnavas will appreciate this. Maybe if it was like a more general crowd, I wouldn't share this, but according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Rupa Goswami, there are several stimuli for lobe. Lobe, of course, is the precursor for practicing rag anuga bhakti. Lobe is the necessary credential that one has to have. And given that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came for rag marg prachar, it's an important thing that we get this lobe, because this lobe allows us to take advantage of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift to the world. Krishna says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Aishwarya Shitila Prem Nahi More Prita. That prem cooled with Aishwarya is not dear to me. Prabhupada gets even more emphatic in this translation. He says, love made feeble by opulence does not attract me. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was mentioned that he came to Prem Ras Niryas Ashwadhan. He came to taste Prem Ras Niryas, the last limit of Prem, and then Rag Marg Prachar, to teach Rag Marg. And therefore he's known as Rasik Shekhar, the Shekhar of the Rasiks, the chief of the Rasiks, and Paramakaruna. Actually, that's about Krishna. Mahaprabhu came for something else. Even that's true about Krishna. Krishna's Rasik Shekhar and Paramakaruna, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we need to get lobe, and lobe has a couple ways it arises. One of the ways lobe arises is by seeing the deities of Radha and Krishna. The other way lobe arises is by hearing the 10th canto. And so it's amazing that Srila Prabhupada established Radha Krishna Seva, Puja, all over the world. And in the same way that Krishnadas Kaviraj was afraid he would die, and so you find in the first chapter of Madhya Lila, he gives the entire rest of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in a bunch of quick verses. Just in case he leaves, at least a synopsis would be there. It wouldn't be lost. He was given a great treasure by Raghunath Das Goswami. Even Rup Sanatan would come to hear from Raghunath Das Goswami about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Das Goswami lived at the feet of Sarup Damodar. He was the heir to his diary, and that realization was given to Raghunath, who then took it to Vrindavan, and Krishnadas inherited it from him. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in many ways, is the combined mercy of Rupa Raghunath to Krishnadas Kaviraj, but especially some of these, because Rupa Goswami had several appreciators, Jiva Goswami perhaps being the most prominent amongst them. But this legacy of Das Goswami was given to Kaviraj Goswami, who made it famous in the world. And so he was afraid that he would die and he wouldn't have a chance to give it. And so perhaps Prabhupada was also thinking like that he may pass away at any moment. And so he gave the Krishna book so that devotees would be able to get the 10th canto from his lotus lips. And so in addition to these beautiful translations we also have Srila Prabhupada. It says, as soon as Kamsa got this information, he took out his sharpened sword and prepared to kill Vasudeva for his duplicity. But Narad pacified him. You are not to be killed by Vasudeva, he said. Why are you so anxious to kill him? Better try to kill Krishna and Balaram. But in order to satisfy his wrath, Kamsa arrested Vasudeva and his wife and shackled them in iron chains. That was the last few verses. And then here's the verse today. Acting on the new information. Prabhupada was quite astute in his command of the English language. It's quite an expert turn of phrase, acting on this new information. It's the way you might dramatically give something, like if you were narrating a movie or something like that. Acting on this new information. Kamsa immediately called for the Keshi demon and asked him to go to Vrindavan immediately to fetch Balaram and Krishna. Makes it sound like go fetch them for some lassi or something like that. But here's an interesting point. In actuality, Kamsa asked Keshi to go to Vrindavan to be killed by Krishna and Balaram and thus get salvation. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Sar Artha Darshini commentary, he mentions this. Oh, another meaning of Hanyetam. He has a real problem whenever Krishna or anybody is criticized. And so every time some criticism comes, and the Mukhya Britti, the primary meaning, is a criticism, he finds some Gona Lakshana Britti, some other way of interpreting the verse. Sometimes really demonstrating his command of the Sanskrit language and really stretching the limits of what you can take out of the text. And so, Hanyetam means you should go meet them, not they should be killed. Meaning you should go get killed by them. And so Prabhupada obviously had access to that commentary. We know he did because we have, in Los Angeles, they have his books, and he has Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary as part of a composite of a number of commentaries that he was working from. And you see that nuance in Prabhupada's Krishna book translation. And so in many ways, the Krishna book is a very simple way of telling the 10th canto. But somehow or other, by the grace of Saraswati and by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, he would oftentimes put some special nuance in there that would even escape a straightforward translation, some sweetness from the purports, from the tikas, for many centuries from our acharyas. Okay. I want to go backwards just a little bit. And you probably already covered this, but it agitated me a little bit, so I just wanted to touch on this just for a second and then use it as a springboard for the next 3-4 verses we're going to discuss. There's a purport here to text 17. And so, well, oh, here it is. I'm sorry, it's the previous verse, text 19, the one that was just done yesterday. But the Vaishnava who did the class yesterday, Giriraj Prabhu, he only lectured mainly on the word kopat, from anger, and he gave a long lecture on that single word and the ramifications of that word. Very beautifully done, Prabhu. Very beautifully done. And so he didn't really touch this purport for 19 very much. So I don't feel bad going back because it wasn't so much touched. They asked me if I wanted to give on Friday, and somehow it worked out that I was giving today instead. And I was so grateful because Giriraj Prabhu gave such a nice class. And I found out he gives once in 3 months. And I think he spent 3 months preparing for that class because it was so perfectly done. I looked over at Govinda Prabhu and I said, he's reading a lecture that he wrote and he's going to finish right at 9:15 on the button. I told him that maybe right around 8:55. And 9:15 rolled around, and just as the hand of the clock over there on that wall moved to 9:15, he finished his lecture. I was so glad I didn't commit the aparad of stepping in and giving an ad hoc lecture in place of all the service and depth and profundity and expertise and bhav that went into that class. So anyway, but he left something for me here in text 19. Vasudeva was grateful to Narad because he was arranging for Kamsa's death at Krishna's hands and further arranging for Krishna to come and live in Mathura where his loving father could associate with him. So I read this and it kind of agitated my mind. Does anybody know why it agitated my mind? Let me read it again. Vasudeva was grateful to Narad because he was arranging for Kamsa's death at Krishna's hands and further arranging for Krishna to come and live in Mathura where his loving father could associate with him. Anybody know why I felt disturbed? When I say agitated, I don't mean happy. I mean like a little disturbed, like, oh, I have to say something here. Anybody know why? Because Nanda is Krishna's father. And Yashoda is Krishna's mother. And when Krishna went to Mathura and left the Brijbasis, it was a great cause of pain and suffering. And so just to hear this without that, and just like as a happy occasion, it requires some discussion. Isn't it? What do you think? I'm getting blank looks from everybody. Who's Krishna's father? Nanda Maharaj. Who's his mother? Yashoda. Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, Prabhupada's sannyas guru and dear godbrother, who was so close to him that when he left this world in 1968, Prabhupada requested a photo be sent to him so he could have a painting made to hang in all his temples. He wrote a verse about Keshav Maharaj, glorifying him. Or penned a verse in his honor. Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, he arranged for Ratha Yatra to be held in Navadvip. He was a big preacher. He had wonderful ideas for preaching. Sometime after he passed away, Bhakti Raksak Sridhar Dev Goswami, Prabhupada's other godbrother, who was also very dear to him, he said you shouldn't do Ratha Yatra in Navadvip. It created a huge fight with the Devananda Gaudiya Mutt in Navadvip. And relations between those two organizations broke down for decades. Because Keshav Maharaj left, and then the suggestion was there, don't do Ratha Yatra anymore, but it was the gift of their guru. How could somebody suggest stopping it? You know what his logic was? His logic was you go to Navadvip, and it's Nitya Navadvip. It's the Dham. And the Dham Basis live there. And you bring a Ratha, a cart, and when the Dham Basis see that cart, it will remind them of Akrur coming. And they will feel great pain. I'm not attempting to say which version is correct. I don't want to get in between those two stalwart Vaishnavas and go to hell in the process. But I did want to communicate what a big deal Akrur's coming to Vrindavan was, which is a direct result of this discussion that's taking place. Just a couple verses later, Akrur's told to go. The Braja Jana, they said, your name is Akrur. Akrur means, what does Akrur mean? One who is not cruel is called Akrur. They said, but you are the most cruel. And when he came to Vrindavan, it was described by Sanatana Goswami that it was like an eagle coming and seizing a piece of meat and running away. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. We can talk about it now for a second. When Akrur came, we'll talk about it in a minute. So, Nanda and Yashoda are Krishna's parents. Do you all raise your hand if you know that? Factually, if you know that for sure. All right, everybody knows that, right? So how, and you raise your hand again if you know how we reconcile that with the statements that Krishna was born in Mathura as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. Raise your hand if you also know the reconciliation. Okay, good. Most of you do. So I'll just say it very briefly. We have a subversive notion of divinity. We worship Krishna as a child instead of a parent. Krishna says in the Gita, Pit aham asya jagato, mata data pitamaha. I'm the mother and the father of the universe. Krishna takes both positions in the Gita. Mother and father, both. But we don't worship Krishna as a parent. We worship Krishna as a child. And there's a reason for that. Bhaktivedanta Saraswati was discussing with Professor Southers from Ohio State University in the late 20s, 1929. And he explained, you worship God as the Father, but you love your Father because your Father helped you when you were a child. Then you grow up, and in reciprocity for what was given to you, you do something for your Father. Right? We all understand this. Not such a big deal in the rest of the world, but in India, people have a hard time joining our mutts. And the reason they have a hard time joining is because who's going to take care of my family? It's a serious consideration. It's dharmic, it's proper. Dharma comes from the ancient Vedic concept, Rita, which is the idea that the Purusha gave rain. And that rain falls on the ground and grows grass, which we can't use. And the cows eat that grass, and they turn into milk. And we take the essence of milk in the form of cream, and the essence of cream in the form of butter, and the essence of butter in the form of ghee, and then we ritually offer that back to the Purusha, and we complete the cycle of Rita. We've taken something, and we give it back. Before the word dharma occurs in the Veda, it's a later term, occurs more in the Upanishads and the later literature, Itihasa literature, but the term Rita is there in the Rig Veda. Foundation of this idea of giving something back. So I took something from my father, and now my father is old, I've grown up, I understand what I've gotten, and I give something back. But that means that your love is not a hetu. It's not causeless, because the cause of your love is the gift you receive from your father. Therefore, your bhakti is not shuddha bhakti. It's not a haituki bhakti, because there's a cause for it. You follow? Better you worship Krishna as your son. Because when the son is born, the father simply gives, doesn't expect anything else. So we worship Krishna as a child. It's not just haphazard. It's not just our tradition. There's some siddhanta behind it. Vrindavan is subversive in many ways. Krishna is Ajit. Right? But in Vrindavan, Krishna becomes Jit. He's Prem Vasya. He's controlled by love. We celebrate this. We think that rather than this being a dushana, a bad quality, it's actually a bhushana, it's an ornament. If God did not become overwhelmed by love, if God could not cry tears of love, if God could not allow himself, in the Gita, Krishna says, Te mai, they are in me. Natteshu, natteshu, I'm not in them. Natteshu aham, I'm not in them. Multiple times in the Gita he says this. 7th chapter, 9th chapter. Te mai natteshvaham, they're in me, I'm not in them. The whole world is sheltered by me, but I am beyond this world. It's a concept of immanence and transcendence. It's not that God is the mere totality of everything in this world, but in addition to everything being sheltered by Krishna in the form of the Virat Purush, Krishna is also beyond this world, transcendent. Te mai nateshvaham. But then he says, Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, te mai chapi teshvaham. If they worship me with bhakti, they're in me, I'm also in them. I'm also in them. He says, Tesham eva anukampartam. That anukampa, what does anukampa mean? Compassion. What does kampa mean? Huh? What is it? Shivering. And anu means for another. Anu means many things, but in this situation as a prefix to kampa, it means shivering for another. Therefore, anukampa literally means to shiver for another person. To shiver for another person. So the devotees are madgata prana. Their lives are dedicated to Krishna. And they're satatam, bhajatam, pritipurvakam. They're always worshiping him with love. And tesham, for them, eva anukampartam. for the sake of my shivering for them, my compassion upon them. Atma bhava sto, myself who's in them. I'm not in them anymore. I'm in them. For that purpose, nashayami, dadami, right? Vahami, I carry, yogakshema. Dadami, I give them, buddhi yoga. And nashayami, I destroy. Agyana jam tamaha, the darkness born of ignorance from their heart. Jnana dipena bhashvata, like with the glowing lamp of knowledge that is Krishna himself. Our conception is that if you don't worship God as your child, then you don't know what real love is. If you're thinking God's your father, there's still something that you're expecting. You follow? It's not a haituki. Similarly, we worship Krishna in Vrindavan because Dwarka is too fancy for us. In Gopal Champu, when Krishna comes back to Vrindavan, he has to take off all his royal garments. And what does he wear? He picks up a peacock feather off the floor. Some gunjamala off the floor. He wears a peacock feather. That's what he wears. But what is a peacock feather? It's just commonly available. Vanamali. He wears a vanamala. Very easily available. Prabhupada was in Detroit. The devotees were offering Prabhupada. I'm like 5% into my class. So we're going to have to move quickly. But anyway, we'll tell the story real quickly. Prabhupada was in Detroit, and devotees flew in from all over the world to offer him garlands. And just like you see in India, the guru is covered with garlands up to his head. You can't even see his head anymore. And then periodically they come by, they pick them all off, and they start all over again, right? You've seen it, right? So Prabhupada was being covered in garlands flown in from Thailand, from Hawaii, fancy garlands, kadamba, mogra, champak. Garlands that cost, 10,000 rupees for one garland in America. Not joking. I'm actually serious. That's how much they cost in America. You want to get nice champak garlands, if you can get them, or mogra garlands, kadamba you cannot get. But mogra, champak you can get. You may pay 10,000 rupees for one garland. So sometimes you see in the West, we fly in our small temple, on special days, we fly flowers in from Hawaii. So Kuladri, the temple president of New Vrindavan, they were so poor in those days. They drove there and they stopped on the side of the road and they just picked some flowers. Not much more than weeds. And they showed up there and he felt so humiliated and embarrassed and ashamed that he hid himself behind a pillar and hid his garland because he didn't want to offer it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, of course, being blessed to be able to understand the heart of his disciple, he said, "Hey, Kuladri, why are you hiding there? Come." And he called him. He says, "Where's my garland?" And Kuladri pulled it out from behind his back. And Prabhupada saw this very simple, small, tiny little garland. And Prabhupada took off all the other garlands. And he put that one on. And he said, "Vanamala, just like Radharani makes for Krishna." We want a simple bhakti. Krishna has to take off his royal robes when he goes back to Vrindavan. And he gets there to Vrindavan and he sees that all the Brijbasis are dressed very poorly. They're dressed very poorly. But he has been sending them for so many years fancy gold and gems and rubies and fancy garments to try to placate them. So why are they dressed so poorly when he shows up in Vrindavan? Because they sold all those garments and jewels to hire pundits, to do yagyas, to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. That's their prem. Their prem atura. They're afflicted by prem, diseased by prem. a prem so profound that it's Krishna Karshan. Krishna means the all-attractive one. But that prem is Krishna Karshini. That prem bhakti attracts even Krishna. You follow? Just like Krishna's Madan Mohan, but Radharani's Madan Mohan Mohini. She attracts. Similarly, that prem is Krishna Karshini. So we worship Krishna as a child in a village with simple things. And when Krishna comes back to the Brijbasis, he has to wear those things. So before he gets back to Vrindavan, he stops in the forest and he takes off all his royal clothes. He cannot go in front of the Brijbasis in this opulent dress. And in fact, when he does go in front of the Brijbasis in this opulent dress, it's the most difficult time. It's Rath Yatra. When the Brijbasis come to fetch Krishna and bring him back to Vrindavan, it's the core of our tradition. Bhaktivedanta Thakur said that Vrindavan is for shallow people. I want to do my bhajan in Kurukshetra. Why would he say such a thing? When Vaishnava was there, he heard this. He said he felt like he'd fallen out of a tree on his head. Because it was so bewildering to him. What possibly could he mean? What could he mean? Why would he say that? Because in Kurukshetra, Radharani's need is the greatest. Because she's so close to Krishna, but she's so far away. And so at that time, the real sevak can do some seva to help her. You understand? So I don't want to go. Vrindavan is nice. It's easy. Of course, that's also not true. The story of Akrura proves that also. But in Kurukshetra, there's the most separation. That's another thing we do that's subversive. So we worship God as a child in a village, right? Carrying his father's shoes on his head. In separation. Because vina vipralamba sambogha pushti ma ashnute. There won't be any nourishment for sambog without vipralamba. Gaur Govinda Maharaj used to say, without vipralamba, union will die, love will die an untimely death. He was paraphrasing what Rupa Goswami said, that I quoted from Ujjvala Nilamani. We believe that the river of Rus has two banks. One is Vipralamba and one is Sambhog. And when you're with Krishna, there's some Sporti, there's some Ananda, and then when Krishna disappears, in that Vipralamba, you come even closer to Krishna. I was just talking with a Vaishnava, one of the Chowpatty brahmacharis, 2 days back, at night. I won't mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him. But there was some emergency, and he had to go and do a full day of heavy construction. A full day of heavy construction. In the sun. Like welding and fixing things, plumbing, that kind of stuff. Real heavy Shudra karma. You could almost say Ugra karma type activity. Not quite what a Bungi would do, but not so far away. And he looked beat up when I saw him. His saffron was dirty. His eyes were all red. Inside his eye, the white was all red. And you saw it on his face. He looked like he was beaten down, tired, worn out. And I felt so privileged to see him. I felt so privileged to see him. Such a real Vaishnav. A real Das. A real member of the Achyuta Gotra. Who's willing to do anything for Krishna. Even when it's very painful. So Krishna understands this. And he pulls these things out of us. Sometimes we may cry, we do so much service. Raise your hand if you've ever worked so hard at the temple that you cried. Not from ecstasy, but because it was just so difficult you thought you couldn't go on. Raise your hand. Nobody? Maybe you're shy to admit it. I asked this devotee, I said, sometimes you cry, you do so much service. He said, yeah, sometimes I do. I felt really close to him. And I felt so much appreciation for him. We need some vipralamba to purify us. We have to feel some separation. That anutap, that repentance, that heat that comes, purifies us. We need that. That's why Krishna gives it to us. And so, anyway, I didn't get to speak about Vasudeva and Devaki. I think maybe I'll just stick with these two verses and leave the next for the next devotee. Nanda Maharaj loves Krishna in this way, as his child. He never thinks Krishna is God. If Krishna does something wonderful, Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill, and Sanatana Goswami mentions that you can see old paintings, so even during his time there were old paintings, of the cowherd men holding up Govardhan Hill with their sticks. At his time he was saying, there are paintings like this. Because they think Krishna won't be able to hold it up. We're big, he's small, we'll hold it up for him. Balaram wakes up sometimes in the night and jumps up out of bed and starts running for the door because he's dreaming that Krishna is being attacked and he has to go rescue Krishna. He jumps up and he wakes up kind of running out the door. So much love he has for Krishna. So that Nanda Maharaj, who loves Krishna that way, he must be Krishna's real father. Therefore, Krishna must have been born in Vrindavan, because Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu told Rupa Goswami, never take Krishna out of Vrindavan. He had to write two plays, Lalita and Vidagda Madhava, so he didn't mess up and take Krishna out of Vrindavan. Two separate plays. Yadu Kumar Krishna is different than Brajendra Nandan Sri Krishna. He's an Angsa. He's a Kala. He's not Krishna in his entirety. We want our conception of the deity is that deity that can love the most, with the most sweetness, with the most depth. That must be God. Everything else is derivative. Therefore, Nanda Maharaj must be Krishna's father, and Yashoda must be his mother, and so therefore, our acharyas find little tiny things. Oh, Yogamaya is called Anuja. Anuja. She's Krishna Anuja, which means she was born after Krishna, which means if she was born in Vrindavan, then Krishna must have been born in Vrindavan before her. A little thing like that they find. So two Krishnas were born. Yadu Kumar Krishna, right? And then also Brajendra Nandan Sri Krishna. And then when Vasudeva brought him, that Angsa merged into him. The same way Vishvarup merged into Nityananda Prabhu. The part merged into the whole. But that deity that can love without limit, filled with mercy. Krishna doesn't even kill demons. Vishnu kills the demons. We learn that from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Actually, we rewrite everything. Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Krishna doesn't even kill Keshi. Keshi and Arista, they come, and Krishna grabs Aristasur and throws him away for some time. He grabs Keshi and throws him away, because Keshi was a horse, so he ran faster. He throws him away, 3 football fields, 600 feet. And then while he's kind of reeling and getting his act together, then Aristasur charges Krishna. And Krishna grabs him, and instead of ripping out his tusk and beating him to death with his tusk, Krishna just kind of holds him down, and with his left hand, strings a string through his nose. Same way he did with Kaliya. Just before, with Kaliya, he played his flute, and when Kaliya was creating some difficulty. Then he got all the gopis. They jumped up on Kaliya's heads, and it was like moving jeweled platforms. And they did a special Ras Leela on the heads of Kaliya. And then Krishna took his left hand, while still playing his flute, and took all the cholis, the uttariyas of the Nagapatnis, of Kaliya's wives, and made one big long rope and strung it through his nose. And drove him around the Yamuna. And so he took Arishtasur and he put a rope through him. He tethered him. And he parked him over by Gopishwar Mahadev. Because there was no Nandi there, so he thought, oh, you'll make a nice Nandi. You put him there. You cool down, you relax. He kept him for later, and he pulled carts for the Brijvasis. Sometimes they have to pull carts, so he kept him for later to pull carts. Then Keshi came, and Krishna just jumped on Keshi and trained him how to dance and trot like equestrian, how to jump around, and then get all the cowherd boys and put them on Keshi's back also. And they just played around Vrindavan. And he kept Keshi also in Vrindavan. Anytime the cowherd boys wanted to go for a horse ride, then Keshi was there. This is Sanatana Goswami's darshan. Krishna must be the son of Nanda Yashoda. Krishna must just love everybody, including Keshi and Arishta. Krishna must never leave Vrindavan. If Krishna leaves Vrindavan, he must come back right away. He has to come back right away. I have a few minutes left, so I'm going to try and just speak a little bit more on Akrur. Akrur came. Akrur came. And when Akrur came, according to Sarup, according to Gopakumar, when you hear this story, even stones and trees break and stones melt. Even outside of Vrindavan. Anybody hears the story of Akrur. Akrur came, and Nanda Maharaj had to bring Krishna out. Yashoda had to bring Krishna out. Nanda Maharaj had to preach to his wife. She chastised him like anything. Why are you letting our son be taken away? How will we live? What are you doing to us? Krishna became so disturbed, he jumped off the chariot and ran to the forest with the gopis. Akrur followed him and preached to him like anything. How all the Vrishnis were suffering. How he had to come to Mathura to do his duty. The gopis, normally the gopis do not act so intimately with Krishna in public. That's also part of the Rasa Vrindavan. Right? Krishna kills a bull, it's auspicious. You follow? Radha kun Sham kun come out of it. Krishna tethers the bull, some demon comes, the demon becomes blessed, does some seva. Everything Krishna touches turns to gold. Everything gets resolved. The gopis leave their husbands and they become our devatas. We spend our whole lives trying to follow in their footsteps. You follow? Krishna carries his father's shoes. We write poetry about that. Meditate on that. Make paintings of it. Try to make that one with our heart. Because anything less than a deity so filled with love that he would give everything to his devotees in reciprocity, that's not God. So the gopis, at that time, when Krishna was being taken away, they threw themselves in front of his chariot. Either to stop the chariot or to kill themselves or both. Sanatana Goswami, who wrote Briha Bhagavatamrita, he's not even sure why. He writes maybe to kill themselves, maybe to stop the chariot. The whole town of Vrindavan falls apart when Krishna goes to herd the cows. How are they possibly going to tolerate him going to Mathura? A crewer has to hold him on the chariot so Krishna doesn't jump off as they leave. And Krishna goes to Mathura, and all the Brajbasis, for all intents and purposes, die that moment. But somehow they can't die. Somehow their love for Krishna keeps them alive, despite the fact that their very life has been taken away from them. And he goes to Mathura, and he's there in Mathura, and Nanda Maharaj goes with him, and he promises the Brajbasis, Nanda Maharaj promises him, I'll never come back without him. I promise you I'll bring him back. And then Vasudeva says, you have to go back. We have to send Krishna for his education. He can't live in the house of his parents for his education. And Nanda Maharaj begins crying. He calls Krishna Father. He says, Father, please don't leave me. Nanda Maharaj is so in love with his son, he calls him Father. Krishna's crying. Each of the cowherd boys comes and hugs Krishna by the neck, one by one, as they're crying. And Nanda Maharaj is holding in his heart the desire that Krishna will say, no, I won't leave. I won't let you go, and go back with him. And Krishna begins to, and Nanda Maharaj is filled with hope. And then Vasudeva preaches to Krishna, and Krishna stops. And he goes back to Vrindavan, and they're so joyous because they holding themselves alive, thinking that when Nanda Maharaj comes back, we know Krishna will be back. And he comes back without Krishna. And they think Krishna might have been killed because they've been afraid to ask what happened when he went to Mathura. They've been afraid to ask because they don't know what might happen. They love Krishna so much, they're so worried. They're afraid to ask. And he comes back, they don't know what to say. Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he says, after some days, Krishna convinces the Mathura Basis he needs to go back to Vrindavan. He never goes to Dwarka. He goes back to Vrindavan. And the devotees there fall even more in love with Krishna than before. And they forget that he ever left in the first place. And sometimes they say, I had a dream last night, you left us. All that remains is just some faint thought that maybe it was a dream, a bad dream, nothing to it. And even that goes away. And Krishna himself is so in love with the Brajbasis, he forgets he ever went to Mathura too. And then, again a Akrura comes, and Krishna has to go, and again he comes back, and again he goes, and again he comes back. But not for a long time, just for a few moments. So our darshan is that Nanda Maharaj is Krishna's father. Our darshan is that Keshi was tamed. That's our gift from our lineage. Our darshan is that Krishna never left Vrindavan, and if he did leave, he just left for 5 minutes. And why is it? Why does there have to be any Vipralamba as well? Because that's the way of bhakti. That's our tradition. The deities wake up, we see them in the morning, they go away, we miss them, they come back, we see them again. We pray to them to be merciful to us, they're merciful. Sometimes their mercy is that we suffer a little bit. That's also good for us. Then we realize they were just doing it for our benefit. We feel closer to them than ever before. We chant Hare Krishna. Even our mantra has Vipralamba and Sambhog. Hare Krishna, they're together. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, they're separated. Hare Ram, they're back together again. Ram, Hare Hare, and they're separated again. And Krishna leaves in Vrindavan, and everybody's heart breaks. He comes back at night. He comes back together. And this is our Siddhanta, that somehow or other this Vipralamba makes you go deeper. Post-liberated. It works here, it works there. Sadhana sadhya tattva. It works in this world, and it works in that world. It purifies us here. It hones us. Like gold becomes purified when you heat it up. All the other metals burn off and you're left with pure gold. It purifies us here, and even in that place, it still goes on. Because it's Anandam Buddhi Vardhana, it has to increase without limit. In fact, here's another crazy idea. People think perfection means static. If you know everything, there's nothing more that can be known. You know everything, it's static, right? But perfection for us means growth. Therefore, Krishna becomes more complete at every moment. We say Purna, Purnatara, Purnatama. Complete, more complete, most complete. And Krishna becomes more complete at every moment. He sees Radharani, becomes more handsome. She sees him more handsome, she becomes more beautiful. And no one ever gives up in that competition. It continues like that ad infinitum. That's our darshan. God has to also be able to grow. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.